Edwina and I always recommend trying to find like a coffee shop that you love and find a group of friends that you enjoy spending time with, but I would also add to that list, find a library that you really enjoy going to. 1, 2, 3, let's go! Hey pairs, welcome back to our channel. I'm Hannah and today I'm going to talk about books. But before I get started, please like and subscribe, that does wonders for our channel and would be super grateful. So last year I only read around 27 books. Well, I guess that's probably a good amount for me, but let me know in the comments below how many books you read last year. This year I'm aiming to read maybe, let's say a book a week, so like 50 books, but that's going to include non-fiction, fiction, audiobooks, textbooks. I'm going to include textbooks because they're hard to get through. And yeah, I thought I'd give you some ideas of the books that I absolutely loved during my au pair year. So number one is a book that I wish I'd read during my au pair year or beforehand. My boyfriend actually bought me this book and told me to read it, and I didn't read it for maybe 2 or 3 years afterwards. When I did read it, I read it in about 2 or 3 days because I loved it so much. So that is Paris Trance by Jeff Dyer. What I love about this book is that he was an expat in Paris and he talks about the city in a way that I also experienced the city. So when I was in Paris, I was trying to read more French authors who are obviously from France and know more about the country in a way that I couldn't relate to. Whereas with Jeff Dyer, I feel like this book was just so incredibly refreshing because he talks about the loneliness you experience when you first arrive in the city. He talks about how in awe of like the beauty you are of the city. He talks about just the relationships that you make with other expats, which I loved. It's basically centered around 4 main characters, and although the ending I was quite saddened by, maybe, not to spoil it too much, but the ending wasn't my favourite, I still go back to this book and think about it all the time. I literally was thinking about it for days after I finished reading it. So I would definitely recommend this to anyone who is going to become an au pair in France. And read it as soon as you can. But don't be too disheartened by like the sad way that the character perceives Paris when they first live there, because things get better. As well as that book, I would recommend The Yoga for People Who Can't Be Bothered by Jeff Dyer, which I also absolutely loved. This was such a fun book to read last year when obviously we couldn't travel, and yeah, it made me feel like I was in all these places that he'd visited, like Thailand, Cambodia and America. I honestly loved this book as well. Number 2 is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who I feel like everyone says they love. I haven't met anyone that doesn't like her work, but I've now read pretty much all of her books, I think, apart from her letter to a daughter or a friend's daughter. But this one, oh, loved it so much. It's based in Nigeria and it just blew me away with like the beauty of her writing, and the history and the culture and everything was just so incredible to read. Obviously it's quite a sad book, well not obviously, but if you read it, it is quite a sad book, but I loved it. I read it super fast. Okay, so when I was an au pair in Berlin, again I think it was my boyfriend that recommended this, which is a bit bad, I need to do my own research, but this is Christopher Isherwood, who is a British author who has written quite a lot of books, but I hadn't even heard of him when I was in Berlin, and I went and I picked this up from the English bookshop, which I absolutely loved and spent so much time in, and yeah, I think I consumed this within about 2 or 3 nights. So there were 2 books in this book, and the second one was the inspiration for Cabaret. And again, I loved this because it was like an expat's perspective of Berlin, and I loved the characters. It was Berlin in the 30s, so as I was reading it, I was kind of walking around thinking like, ooh, like, imagine the 30s. And I just, I loved it so much, and just love the font size of the book, and I love when you buy a book that just like feels nice in your hands. I feel like that makes me read it so much faster. But yeah, another one that I inhaled practically. Okay, my next book is one that lots of people talk about on BookTube, and I know why, and I did love it as well. It's A Little Life by Hanna, and I love reading about her because she has just got an incredible life. She like writes on the side of being an editor. She's an incredible person. But with this book I could only get to about here, which is something that I never do. I still have the bookmark in it. I literally never do that with books, but I just was so sad and it was making me cry and I just couldn't carry on, and I always think, oh, I will carry on at some point, because I just sat there in a trance reading it. The writing size is teeny tiny and I was just soaked up in this New York City friendship. But I just couldn't get past the really sad bits. But it's still one of my favourite books, which is ridiculous because I don't know how it is. Leave a comment below if you've managed to read this whole book and tell me what you thought of it and whether I should carry on, because I don't know, I'm a bit scared to carry on, but still love it. As well as that one, I read and finished Hanna Yanagihara's, I think this was her first book, and this was based on the life of like a creepy researcher basically, but it was fascinating. I love her writing style. It really just like pulls you along for the whole journey, and yeah, this is one that I think I read just after my au pair year, but it stayed with me. It's still there, so I think it deserves to be on this list. Okay, next up is Tina Fey Bossy Pants. I bought this from a second-hand bookshop somewhere in my au pair year, or one of my au pair years, and it made me laugh so much. It was like so uplifting for evenings when I was feeling sad or just a bit despondent about my whole au pair year. And I just love the way she talks about like the expectations that are put on women and how you're expected to just be like this gorgeous, perfect little creature that doesn't speak. I don't know, I think it sparked my interest in feminism, and yeah, it's really funny, so definitely recommended. And I would say finally, one of my favourite books for all time is David Attenborough's Adventures of a Young Naturalist. And if you are someone who loves travelling and you feel quite saddened by the fact that we haven't been able to travel the last year and might not be able to travel much this year, then I definitely recommend picking this up, because David Attenborough talks about just all these places that he visited when he was really young, and obviously he's in his 90s now, so these places he went to see were just like undiscovered by tourism, and it was like difficult to get to different places. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, there are probably some criticisms of this book, but I just love it. I think reading it makes you feel so inspired to see the world in a new light, and it made me feel quite sad about climate change, and definitely sparked my interest in trying to live a more sustainable life and fly less and take trains more, and you know, and just generally try and have a more sustainable lifestyle, I guess. So definitely read this one and watch David Attenborough's TV show that is on Netflix if you haven't seen it yet. It's also fantastic. The last book I'm going to recommend, which I actually completely forgot about until just now, is our book, which is a bit ridiculous, and this is not why I did this video, to plug our book, but Edwina and I wrote a book about becoming an au pair in Paris, but it's also a useful book for becoming an au pair anywhere. We've kind of niched ourselves down to the Paris area, but we definitely have given like useful tips, like packing guides, all sorts of things in there for becoming an au pair. So if you are interested, please check it out on Amazon, and would be really grateful if you wrote us a review if you have read it. I'm also someone who would very much recommend getting a library pass for your au pair city. Like as soon as you move to a new place, Edwina and I always recommend trying to find like a coffee shop that you love and find a group of friends that you enjoy spending time with, but I would also add to that list, find a library that you really enjoy going to. It could be like close to your house. There used to be one in Berlin that was like a 5-minute walk from me, or it could be someone that you go to and spend an afternoon in, but I would recommend getting a library pass and exploring the English section so that you manage to save money on your au pair year. And the other thing is, I would definitely recommend getting a Kindle or a Kindle alternative, because when I was in France, thankfully my host parents had quite a lot of English books because they were English speakers, but I definitely would have struggled if I couldn't get my hands on any books all year without spending like 10 euros. So yeah, those are my 2 tips. Libraries, Kindles, you're all set. Please, if you've enjoyed this video, comment down below with your favourite books, and I also am very tempted to do a video about the books that I'm planning to read during this year, so if you're interested, please give this video a thumbs up, and yeah, I really want to know. Please tell me your opinions on books. I'm an avid book reader. I guess that's all for now. Ciao!